Hi, it's Nikki, and welcome back to Live a Little, your cozy corner of the internet where we discuss all of the in-between bits of life, the messy, honest, and unfiltered, where you may not always have that person to talk to about them, but here we do it all. Say it with me, judgment-free. Welcome back. Today, as you would have seen from the title, we are getting into dipping our toe into beauty standards, social media, individuality, and the idea of radical self-acceptance. This is a very personal one to me, so I'm looking forward to getting into it. I was asked recently how I embrace my individuality and sound out some of the noise from social media about comparison, about appearance. What do I do? What is my perspective on it? And so I thought this is such a topical episode, and one that is so current and that so many of us are struggling with, is our image as, humans, and also our individuality. When there is so much noise, how do you know what's actually you? So let's get into it. I first wanted to talk about beauty standards as a concept. Where are we at with beauty standards right now? Obviously, beauty standards are not new. Every era, every part of history, there has been some sort of standard, some version of what was considered beautiful or aspirational. There has always been a standard, but the difference now is that we are exposed to it constantly. And we're exposed to ourselves constantly as a result. All you have to do is stare down at a black phone screen and you can see your reflection. It's everywhere. And now we don't just live in our bodies, we watch ourselves living in our bodies. And no human being is meant to be aware of their own face that much. Beauty standards are also changing constantly. It is never a destination that you get to and then feel content with if you're able to achieve that thing. It's a moving target, and social media speeds up everything to an nth degree. A beauty trend that used to take years to become mainstream now happens overnight, or is said to be delivered in just one product. Sometimes it's often packaged as wellness or as self-care or glow up culture or confidence or being a better version or the best version of yourself. Well, how about the version of yourself now being good enough? What's often sold to us as self-improvement is really just insecurity that's being packaged and told as a story with nicer branding. There is a difference between wanting to feel good and being taught that you are a problem to solve, and that life is about constantly striving to solve these said problems, whether they are external or they are internal. And I obviously grew up with a facial difference where I was very aware that I did not fit the mold or the beauty standard in a world that is obsessed with beauty. You see it on magazines, you see it in TV commercials, you see it in product commercials, even little comments that, you have certain family members or friends make. It is rampant and it is everywhere. And that is where, it becomes really personal to me, because I grew up with a facial difference and my relationships with the idea of a beauty standard is incredibly complicated and has been from quite a young age. And I almost think that the idea of self-rejection came quite prematurely to me. And I think my relationship with my body has massively been affected by that from a young age. My body was medicalized. My body was seen as this vehicle for doctors to examine, to cut into, to be changed, to be stitched up, to be monitored and discussed. Like I'm this third party in the room. And so when your body is from very early on treated like something that needs constant intervention, I think it can sever some of the natural connection that you're supposed to have with it. And I definitely feel like that has happened with me, where I've almost become more connected and more hyperfixated on my body because it's all that's being talked about around me and to me, and the things that need to be done to it to benefit it in a more medical way, obviously. But also I've had some surgeries that have been more cosmetic to try and balance out the two sides of my face to help with swelling. So it's still intervention, it's still stuff that's done to me and my body. But then equally, I feel like because I had to accept that these things were happening to me and it was just something that I had no control over, I had to at some point disconnect a bit of attachment that I had to my appearance. I'm obviously a young girl. I'm still a human that cares about the way she looks, and it sucks some days. I really struggle with the fact that I look different and I'm just this 20-year-old one girl that wants to walk down the street and not get looked at or double taken at twice, three times maybe, by the people who I walk past. But equally, I think it's done me good because many of us as humans, our biggest fear or your biggest fear is things happening to your appearance that are out of your control. And so often with cosmetic procedures or buying that product that's supposed to, like claims to cure literally every problem you've ever had or fix everything in your life and obviously doesn't, can feel even more like a means to an end, and like you're even more hell bent on it working. Because I've had 98 surgeries where everyone has been to try and do something, tried to fix something, and inevitably either the situation is never fixed or it can make things worse, or the goalpost is constantly moving for me. So attainability is not something that is a natural thing in my life like it is in normal humans and in relation to their appearance. When people talk about loving your body, I've always found that phrase quite difficult because for a long time I wasn't trying to love my body. I was trying to understand it, survive it, heal from it, and make peace with it. And when you have a facial difference, beauty standards can feel incredibly personal. It's not just, I wish I looked like that person online or that girl at my school who all of the boys are fawning over. Sometimes it's more like, I wish I could move through the world without my appearance being the first thing that people notice or judge me on. I wasn't trying to be different. I didn't wake up one day and choose to stand out. I just did, whether I liked it or not. And I've had to make peace with that slowly. Not in a I love every part of myself way, but more in a this is me. And I don't want to spend my whole life apologizing for that. Because then I'll be 80 and all I will have done is apologize for literally existing. And as someone who grew up feeling so different from everything I wanted to be or look like, I now feel a real duty of care or sense of protection over the younger version of myself who couldn't see that she was beautiful or worthy or of value and had value beyond how other people reacted to her or how the cover of her book. And also, I feel like I have a duty of care to other people and other young girls who might already feel different or feel like they're not enough. If I only show the polished version of my life, especially online, I'm definitely contributing to the exact thing that hurt me, and I don't want to do that. Because younger me needed to see someone like that. They needed to see reality. They needed to see difference and individuality. Not someone's perfect, someone's real. No child really is born thinking that they're not enough. No child is born thinking their face is wrong or their reflection needs to be compared or changed or criticized. Often those negative voices don't start as our voices. They start on the outside. Maybe it was a comment for you, a look, a nickname, a comparison, an experience you had at school, or an unkind comment that a family member made, or a comparison they made of you to your sibling or someone else. But those things slowly became internalized because they hurt and they touched something in you and they moved within. Because it's in your head, you assume it must be telling you the truth. If you were told that you were too big as your size, or you were not good enough, or you needed to change things about yourself at a very pivotal time in your life, aka literally being a child and your brain and parts of your brain developing, you are going to take those things on as problems with yourself because they were things that people picked up on or treated you differently for. And so because of that, you begin to think that it is the truth. But maybe it's just something you've heard so many times that it started sounding like it was coming from you. Because familiarity doesn't always mean it's true. That is why pep talks don't always work. When someone says, just love yourself, it can feel impossible if your brain has spent years practicing and believing the opposite or hearing the opposite, being treated as the opposite. Maybe the first step to trying to not be so negative with self-talk towards yourself isn't suddenly thinking, God, I'm so amazing, I'm so beautiful, and I love myself exactly like this, but trying to create distance from the thought. Instead of I'm ugly, try I'm having the thought that I'm ugly. I talked about this recently with anxiety and how anxiety and your feelings are not truth, are not fact, are not verbatim. And so, if you understand that if you feel ugly, that is not a self fulfilling prophecy or a truth that you have the answer to, like, yes, I am ugly. No, it is just something that your brain, the not kind part of your brain, is telling you because maybe you've heard that, or maybe you're having a bad day, or maybe you're lacking some control in your life. And by telling yourself that, it fulfills something in you that you need, some sense of control or attainment. By doing that, it can remind you that a thought isn't the fact. It might be loud, it might be familiar, and that's why it's comforting, and that might be convincing, but that doesn't mean it deserves to be in charge. Healing your self-image is practice. It's hearing the voice and not immediately obeying it. It's hearing, don't post that. You look bad in that. Don't share that. Don't hold your body like that, and still letting yourself be seen. You practice not apologizing for your face, for your body, and just practice letting yourself exist. So I've been looking at the idea of radical self-acceptance recently and seeing it a lot. And instantly I kind of huffed and thought, God, what is this now? What is this new idea that people are going to feel like they have to do? And if they don't do it properly or they can't do it well, they also feel like they're failing because they're not accepting themselves enough. And I used to think that self-acceptance also meant loving every part of yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, and every part in between all the time. And honestly, that feels impossible. But the more I've looked into it and the more I think about what radical self-acceptance really is, it's less about loving every part of yourself and more about stopping the war within yourself. Beauty standards teach us that acceptance should come after transformation. But radical self-acceptance asks, what if I'm allowed to stop hating myself before I change anything? What if I'm allowed to love this version of myself as it is? For me, it's complicated because my face has never really felt neutral. It's been commented on, medicalized, questioned, looked at, praised, pitied, and misunderstood. So acceptance isn't just looking in the mirror and saying, I'm beautiful. Sometimes I'm saying I'm allowed to exist without turning my face into an explanation. There are days still where I wake up and I struggle a lot. There are days where walking through a busy place feels hard, and I'll pretend to be scratching my face just so I can hide my eye and give myself a bit of respite from being seen. But I've also had to make some peace with the fact that this is my body I'm living in for as long as I live. Wouldn't it be such a shame to spend the whole life I am living in constantly battle with myself? Your body is your home at the end of the day. It is the vehicle, it is the thing that you are living in. The only thing that you will be with as much as you are is your body and yourself. And so there is no point spending your whole life standing inside your home and criticizing every wall, every picture, every undone part of it, because it is what you are living with. So you have to make peace with it and love it for what it is. You love it for the parts of it that make it different, that aren't perfect, because wouldn't perfect be so boring? Wouldn't perfect give you nothing to look at, nothing to think about, nothing to ponder about? Wouldn't that be such a shame if everything in your home was actually just a house? That isn't what makes a home a home. If I was talking to my friend who was feeling insecure or having a bad day, I wouldn't tell her, just love yourself. That would be probably the worst thing you could tell her, because she would be like, God, I'm failing at not even knowing how to love myself either. I think I'd say, I'm really sorry you're feeling that way. And I'm sorry if the world has made you feel like the parts of you that make you different are the parts that you need to change or you need to fix. I'd remind her that a mirror doesn't need to become a full investigation. Your reflection doesn't need to become a meeting about your self-worth or the things that need to be changed. And I'd remind you that you do not need to wait until you look different to start living. That's the trap. Life is happening right now. You will never be the same age you are in this very moment than you are in 1 second more. You're 1 second older then. And I saw someone say that you probably have about 80 summers. So do you want to spend each of those summers body shaming yourself, each of those summers not wearing the dress you wanted to wear because you didn't think you had the body for it? No. What a shame that would be. And you deserve better. That younger version of you that dreamed to be a princess or a witch or dreamed to fly, whatever it was, that girl, that boy, that anyone, they deserve better. They deserve those parts to be nurtured and told that they can and they shouldn't hide. I always think about the idea that if you looked in the mirror every day and you had a photo of your younger self stuck on the mirror, you would think twice and 3 times before you said the things to yourself that you do, the unkind things, because you would never ever say them to that version of you. So though you may be a few years older or 10 or 20 years older, why does that make them okay now? And I know that it's hard because especially when there's people prey on the weaknesses about ourselves and the things that we don't like or that we struggle with, especially society, because that makes it profitable. If we loved things about ourselves, no one could sell us anything because we wouldn't think we needed it. So everyone's telling you, you need this thing. You know, if you're not confident in your acne, if you're not confident with your weight, well, here you go. We've got the thing to solve that problem because it is a problem, but it's not. These things that we've been told are problems and issues with ourselves are not the problem. Society is the problem for making us feel like we are constantly having to fix those things about ourselves. It's been this way as long as time has existed, you know? In every single era, even the caveman times, there was still a version of it, just to not this extreme. Us humans were never, ever, ever supposed to be so aware of our reflections or the way we looked. You know, when my mum and dad were growing up, most of their photos were on film. So you took one photo and you moved on with your day. You had no idea how it looked. You had no idea what the instant feedback the camera was telling you was. You took it, you stayed in the moment, you stayed present, you didn't fix your hair, and you moved on with your day. And it is so hard to do that now when every single day we are confronted with versions of ourselves more than we'd ever like to admit. The back camera version of ourselves, the front camera version, the version of the photo that the other people take, the mirrored version of ourselves, the reflective version of ourselves. So many versions that we can actually never escape from the very thing that is actually affecting us most is by spending too much time looking at ourselves, caught up with ourselves. And that's exactly it. That's what makes it so difficult because I've realized that someone else's beauty doesn't mean that I am any less beautiful or you are any less beautiful. Her beauty isn't proof that you're lacking. It's just hers. It doesn't take anything away from you. I really struggled with that growing up, is that I envied so many girls around me for how beautiful they were, all the attention they got for their appearance, because those were the very things I felt like I was lacking in and that I did not have. And then I'd feel guilty for envying these girls because I was like, well, it's not their fault they're beautiful, and it's not their fault that they are fitting the mold that people see as beautiful and as perfect. And I try my best to merge my identity and remove all individuality and individualism I had into that mold. I try so hard to shove myself into that mold. But that mold is not for me, and that mold is not for you. That is her mold, and that is great for her. And I'm sure she also has issues with her appearance, unfortunately, because of society or being reduced to just her appearance. But it doesn't matter in life how hard you try and squeeze yourself into someone else's mold that you feel like you should be, you are not going to be able to fit it because that is not yours. And that is what we spend so much of our time, especially as young adults, doing, is trying to squeeze ourselves into molds that were never meant for us in the first place. We don't want to take up space. We just want to basically turn into whatever shape that space requires. Instead of saying that, no, I'm not this shape, I'm going to make the space hold me, we believe we have to fit the space around us. And that's what society has made us believe, unfortunately. And, I want to remind you not to wait. It is so important to not wait until you are this thing that you have finally attained to start living. You deserve a life that is so much bigger than you and so much bigger than what is here and what is being looked at. So these are actual things to try and that I am trying to embrace my individuality and to remember that social media is just a highlights reel. Firstly, declutter your digital input. Unfollowing or muting maybe 3 people whose content makes you feel like you need to change because you're not enough is so important to do. If ultimately social media is the way that we're moving as a society, you have to do the housekeeping to make it as safe as a place you can for yourself and your mind. So we can't control a lot of the things we see on social media if we are a part of it, but we can in some ways control what we consume. So make sure that it is a kind place for your brain. Even if you don't want to unfollow certain people, maybe they're your friends and they make you feel a certain way, that's okay, but you can mute them. Next, do I even like this? Check before you buy or change something. Ask yourself, do I actually even like this? Or have I just seen it enough so many times that I feel like I should or that it's normal? I found growing up that there were so many things, especially when I was at school, whether it was an artist or it was a brand or it was God knows what, where I'd see girls that I wanted to look like using these things or listening to these things or doing these things. And I thought because of that, I had to be exactly that. I had to mold myself to exactly that. So I remember sitting myself down and forcing myself to listen to certain music that I didn't even like because I thought, well, I have to like this thing. I have to convince myself I like this thing because everyone around me does. All the people I want to be like do. So I have to, because that's one thing I can change if I can't change my appearance. But then where is the individuality in that? You are just merging into someone, one you can't become because they are not you and you are not them, but you are losing the parts of yourself that were things that you celebrated when you were little. And you would hate to see a younger version of you let those things you once loved slip away. Okay, keep a weird joys note. For a week, write down random things that make you happy but have no social value or are hierarchical. Notice what you feel most normal around. Who are the people you don't have to be more impressive around or perform around or conform around? And spend more time with them. Maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's a family member, a friend. Who are the people that you can show up just as you and be with, just as you are? Because often it's also our environment that is telling us that we are not enough. If you heard that growing up, then, being around family maybe was difficult and you felt like you had to conform to whatever they felt like you needed to be. So who are the safe people or person in your life? Maybe it's your partner, where you feel like you can show up exactly as you are and that is enough, because that's how it should be in life. Ethan Hawke, bringing up a really random person in the middle of this, Ethan Hawke, actually at the Oscars, was being interviewed and once said that something that actually was really profound for like a really unserious setting. He said it to Amelia from Chicken Shop Day, and I could tell she was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was about to banter with you and you've just dropped some like bars on me and now I don't know how to react to this. But he once said that the person who loves always wins, because feeling something deeply means you're living. And the sun doesn't stop shining just because the grass doesn't appreciate its rays. So maybe the way I interpret that in terms of self-acceptance is part of self-acceptance is learning not to constantly measure your worth by whether other people notice it, validate it, or desire it. Flowers are the part people clap for often, the visible parts, the easy to compliment parts, the parts that are nice to look at. But your roots are the things that keep you alive when nobody is clapping. Your kindness, your humour, your empathy, your resilience, your ability to keep going. The parts of you that have grown quietly and been forced to in the dark. So maybe embracing individuality is not just asking, how do I look? Which is often the most asked question to ourselves, which is crazy. Maybe it's asking, what am I rooted in? What makes me me when no one is watching? Your flowers might be what people notice first, but your roots are what make you you. And I really want to leave you with that because I have spent my whole life trying to make my flowers as pretty as they possibly could be. It's the whole painting the roses red idea. In Alice in Wonderland, the Queen of Hearts paints the roses red because they're not good enough to her as they are. But the roses were still beautiful. And I think that in life, we are constantly trying to paint over something or change something instead of just accepting it as they are. We are constantly trying to sometimes change one another, but most importantly, change ourselves. And what a shame that is, that you can never really accept the home that you're living in. What a shame to constantly feel like you need to change things about it instead of just letting it exist and breathe and develop and live and love and laugh and cry. Why are we constantly trying to change the very thing that is keeping us here today? It's such a shame. And I completely understand that it's easier said than done. I'm horrible to myself at times. I've struggled with, eating problems growing up and struggled with my body image and the fact that I really absolutely cannot change the way that I look. I've internalized that in so many ways. And I am such a horrible person to myself at times. It's just so unjust and it's just so undeserved. And I think that things like aging and growing old and frown lines and wrinkles and all of these things are such a privilege. If you've got smile lines, how incredible is that you can say that these lines develop from you being happy and from you smiling? Or wrinkles are actually about how you've been able to live a long life. Why is society and the media and all of these things, why are we fighting the very things that show that we have lived a life? That's what I will never understand. And I think that is where I have been very lucky because I have had to stop fighting certain realities, whereas so many of us as humans hate that we're aging, hate that age actually shows that we are living a life. We want to stay frozen as one exact version of ourselves, or we're trying to attain a very specific version of ourselves that will then prove to ourselves that we are worthy. What a sad life. What a sad, sad life. All of these things, all of these parts of ourselves are what make up who we are. And that's why people always say your face has been born out of two people that loved each other at a certain point, hopefully. My face is not like my mum's or my dad's or my brothers or sisters. It's like mine. But it was made from two people that loved each other. And so why am I going to hate that I have, maybe it's you have your mum's nose or you have your dad's ears or eyes. Who knows what it is, but you have things that were born out of love. And we're often rejecting those things that were born out of love and not loving them and not accepting them. So I think the biggest part of embracing individuality is actually just realizing that you are enough as you are. And it is okay to envy people for how they look because sometimes people do have an easier time if they look a specific way. But I'm sure that there is someone out there that is envying a part of you. Maybe some person who's only been known for their appearance envies that they're not known as being smart or funny, or no one actually really cares to get to know more than what meets the eye because they are just seen as looking good and their flowers. No one actually cares to get to know their roots. Whereas people actually get to know the depth of you because then they know there's so much more there. And that's why I feel like my relationships with people in my life have so much depth because I've had to cut through the bullshit of appearance because I can't give them something that they might want that's to do with my appearance. There's an extent where I've had to stop performing because my appearance is something that I cannot change for anyone's desirability. So I have to just learn to live with it, learn to exist with it, and show all the other parts of myself and prove all the other parts of myself that are worthy to the very person that doesn't feel like they are enough at times, which is myself. Most of life is proving to yourself that you are enough. And we learn that lesson too late in our lives when it's too late. The first step is actually giving yourself the space and the comfort and the safe place to just exist as you are. To play, to live, to laugh, to love. So my little thought of the week is to notice one part of yourself that you keep trying to reject, to edit, to hide, to shrink, or to apologize for. Not to love it overnight, just to notice it and ask, what would it look like if I stopped fighting this very part of me today? Maybe that's radical self-acceptance in its smallest form. Not loving everything, not pretending insecurity doesn't exist, just choosing not to make yourself the enemy. And, maybe it's something as simple as if you're used to kind of editing parts of yourself when you post photos on social media, post the damn photo as it is and don't think twice about it. Post it. I promise you, no one is thinking about you as much as you're thinking about yourself. And that's honestly sometimes a hard lesson to learn because it makes it seem like people don't care. No, they just don't care about that. They don't care about your appearance in the way that you think they do. And that is honestly a really humbling but great lesson to learn when you realize that people don't care about you and what you look like as much as you think because they're too bothered thinking the same about themselves. So just post the damn photo and let that be that. Post the photo with your friends where you feel like, oh, but my stomach or my face, or post it because you had a lovely time. So what a shame it is to not share it if you want to share it just because you posed in a certain way that was unflattering. Who the fuck cares about what was flattering? We just need to live. We just need to live. So thank you for being here with me for this one. I know that beauty standards and social media can feel like such a heavy, overwhelming personal thing because it's not just about how we look, it's about how we feel we're allowed to exist in the world. And you do not have to look like everyone else to be worthy. You don't have to turn yourself into a trend or into a standard. You don't have to wait until you feel beautiful to start living. You don't have to abandon the parts of yourself that make you you. You are allowed to be seen now. You're allowed to take up space now. You're allowed to build a life that is bigger than being looked at now. So with that all being said, from your big sister, Nikki, or your little sister, your friend that is always here, judgment free, as always, remember to be kind to yourself and live a little.